Since his trade from the Ottawa Senators, Erik Karlsson hadn't been the same player. As the San Jose Sharks slid down the standings year after year, Karlsson's career followed a similar trajectory. It looked like Karlsson's best days were behind him. Then, almost out of nowhere this season, Karlsson broke out again. Throughout the entirety of 2022-23, he'd consistently been the NHL's best offensive defenseman. Erik Karlsson finished the year with more points than he'd ever scored before, beating out both of his previous two Norris Trophy winning years. At this point, we need to ask, is Erik Karlsson really back? There was a time where Erik Karlsson was considered the best player in the NHL. That was during the 2016-17 season, a season in which Karlsson was the closest he'd ever been to winning the Hart Trophy, placing 5th in the trophy's voting. It was his third consecutive season in the top 2 of Norris Trophy voting, although his only win of the 3 years came in 2014-15. So, what did Karlsson do that was so impressive? In the regular season, Erik Karlsson scored 17 goals, added 54 assists, and finished just behind Brent Burns and Victor Hedman for the lead in D-man scoring. That was enough for the award consideration, but his most impressive moments were in the 2017 playoffs. It was there that Erik Karlsson almost single-handedly carried the Senators all the way to Conference Finals Game 7 double overtime before Chris Kunitz sent Ottawa home. Karlsson, in those playoffs, scored only twice, but contributed 18 points with his 16 assists. Stats couldn't tell the story of just how dominant Karlsson was, though. He was on the ice for nearly half of every game, finishing the postseason with an average TOI of 28.08. He seemed to always make the correct play, including when that play was something that less than 1% of all NHLers would even be capable of. And yet somehow, all of this was accomplished while Karlsson reportedly played through various injuries. This was peak Erik Karlsson, reaffirming the idea that he was the best defenseman in the NHL while throwing his hat in the ring as the best player in the entire league. The season afterwards was a huge disappointment for Ottawa, despite making it as far as they did largely because of Karlsson's heroic performances. The Senators behaved like legitimate contenders to begin 2017-18, causing them to make one of their worst trades at the beginning of the season. As the season progressed and the Senators struggled to get wins, they realized their mistake. The team sold ahead of the trade deadline and finished the year second last in the NHL. Karlsson still had a very solid year on his own, as he scored 9 times, totaled 62 points, and received a smattering of Norris Trophy votes. The Swedish superstar only had 1 year left on his deal, though, and the Senators' upcoming rebuild combined with some off-ice issues meant that Erik Karlsson was very likely going to be moved during the off-season. On September 13, 2018, Erik Karlsson was officially traded to the San Jose Sharks. The Senators were able to get a massive haul, including Josh Norris, Dylan DeMello, and the pick that eventually became Tim Stützle. Years later, the trade reflects poorly on San Jose, but in the moment, all the Sharks cared about was adding this franchise talent to their already stacked roster. The first season went about as expected. Karlsson unfortunately missed some significant regular season time with injuries, but still managed 45 points in his 53 games played. The Sharks finished 6th place in the NHL and were matched against the Vegas Golden Knights in round 1. They scraped by the Knights in 7, moved past the Avalanche in 7, and then fell to the eventual Cup champion St. Louis Blues in 6 games. Karlsson was 3rd in playoff scoring for the Sharks, finishing 4 points behind team leader Logan Couture. In the summer, Erik Karlsson and the Sharks agreed upon an extension. Karlsson signed for 8 years at $11.5 million per, a contract that makes him the highest paid defenseman in the NHL to this day. Unfortunately, directly after the signing of that contract, the Sharks took a massive step backwards. Joe Pavelski moved on to Dallas, and with Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, and Brent Burns all starting to regress, Karlsson didn't have much elite talent backing him up. Karlsson tallied 40 points in 56 games before a broken thumb in February put him out for the rest of the season. It was the first season in the past 8 in which Karlsson did not receive a single Norris Trophy vote. In 2020-21, Karlsson only missed 4 games. It was his first season for the Sharks in which he wasn't significantly impacted by injury. That only made his numbers even more concerning. A healthy Erik Karlsson averaged the lowest points per game of his career, scoring only 22 points over 52 games. At only 30 years old, regression wasn't expected to hit him this hard, this early. With consistent injury problems on a weak team, with an unmovable contract, many began to suspect that Karlsson was done at the highest level, that he'd never bounce back to what he once was. There was noticeable improvement in Karlsson's production in 2021-22. He put up 35 points in 50 games, an average of above a quarter point per game more than the year previous. The numbers weren't otherworldly, but they were an encouraging sign that Karlsson may not be finished at the highest level. Less encouraging was the fact that, yet again, Karlsson missed a huge chunk of the season due to injury. Any positive sign from Karlsson came with the caveat that it seemed that the injury issues were endless. San Jose prepared to enter the 2022-23 season with zero expectations for team success and minimal expectations or pressure for Erik Karlsson to perform at an elite level. And yet, Karlsson went on to perform beyond an elite level. Karlsson was by far the most productive offensive defenseman in the NHL, leading all defenders in both goals and assists. He's the only defenseman to place in the top 15 in league scoring, with next closest Josh Morrissey and Quinn Hughes ranked joint 38th. With 101 points in 82 games, Karlsson became the first defenseman to break 100 since Brian Leetch over 30 years ago. The offensive output is obviously incredible, but another great sign is the fact that Karlsson managed to play in all 82 games. For the first season in a very long time, Erik Karlsson was completely unobstructed by injury. From top to bottom, this past season has been a complete revitalization for Erik Karlsson. Based on both general consensus and betting odds, Erik Karlsson seems to be the heavy favorite to take home this year's Norris Trophy. If he ends up winning the award, it will be the third time he's done so, with the last one coming 8 seasons ago. This would also move Karlsson into an elite group of only 8 other players who have won the award 3 or more times, joining Orr, Lindstrom, Harvey, Bork, Chelios, Coffey, Potvin, and Pilat. There have been plenty of conversations about the possibility of a trade for Karlsson off of the Sharks. He clearly doesn't fit in with the window the team is now under, and it would likely benefit both himself and San Jose to move on from him. Karlsson was a top target to potentially be moved at past year's deadline, but his $11.5 million per year cap hit combined with San Jose's reported asking price made a deal impossible at the time. Given these complications, it's still probably incredibly unlikely Karlsson gets moved anytime soon, but the opportunity to play on another great team could allow Karlsson's resurgence to last on throughout many more seasons. Erik Karlsson has made his way back up to his elite status. After several grueling seasons in San Jose, it really looks like he's finally back. With the Sharks well out of battling for any kind of postseason success, we can all hope that Erik Karlsson is able to play out the rest of his prime years on a quality team.